Hum, Pronto. Então o pessoal vai aparecendo aí aos poucos. Mandei o link lá no tournament. E boa tarde, sejam bem-vindos a mais um ShoryuCast. Estamos aqui de novo, começando a stream um pouquinho mais cedo, em realidade, alguns minutos adiantados. A ansiedade do pai não consigo controlar, né? E hoje a gente vai falar com um sujeito que foi muito importante para a história do Third Strike, especialmente aqui no Ocidente. Estaremos falando com o TheShend, que é um dos maiores canais de Third Strike aqui no nosso YouTube. Uh, Além disso, talvez menos conhecido aí para um público mais novo, ele é responsável por restaurar e buscar vídeos bem antigos aí, footage de torneio que aconteceu no Japão, uh, VHS, DVD, um monte de coisa. Então vai ser bem interessante saber como ele faz isso, como é o procedimento dele. Por hora, porém, terei de mudar para o inglês. Eu estou falando em português, mas obviamente ele não é aqui do Brasil, não fala português. Terei de me arriscar no inglês aqui e depois, no futuro, nós vamos colocar uma legenda aqui para ficar um pouquinho mais compreensível. Mas por hora, vamos ter que arriscar aí no inglês mesmo. Deixa eu mudar a ceninha aqui. So, I just introduced the stream here for our spectators. I was introducing you because, as we know, you have one of the biggest YouTube channels here on regarding 3S is what I mean. Uh, Third strike footage, old school tournaments, and how did you get into Third Strike? Because your first video was around 18 years ago, and 18 years ago I was 4. That's a lot of time, and uh, it's certainly an amazing job you've done. But I like to know where that began, you know, recovering videos, finding the tournament footage, all that good stuff.
Um, well, I think like a lot of people, it was the game that came first. There was a small group of friends that I used to play with when I was working on about 20 or so. Um, and yeah, we'd go around to his house and play Third Strike on Dreamcast, but we'd play on the Dreamcast pads. So as was an interesting setup because we didn't map the mediums to any buttons. We just had the shoulders uh, programmed for the triple punch and the triple kick. So X moves were easier, and yeah, we just never used mediums. So it was a very rough and ready,
Oh yeah,
if not
definitely.
completely stupid way of playing it. But we didn't know any better. But again, even though we weren't using, you know, a third of the buttons, we still loved the game. So yeah, we play that a lot. And then when we got, I think, broadband internet, I think very early 2000s, like 2001, 2, I think I found places online which were discussing Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, like the SRK forums and some small UK forums. And it was just from there where you got linked or found a link to a video, and then you were seeing how it was actually properly played. So yeah, we were very much frogs in the well when it came to playing the game. We had no idea how you're supposed to play it. And then when I first found a video, there's something crazy had happened, which was I think one character, I think a Yang character, was very very low on health. Like he was the next low kick he would die, and the other character was a Ken player, and he threw an X fireball from across the screen, and when the Yang player parried both of those, both fireballs from the X, I lost my mind a bit and think, oh, you can actually do that. That's the most skillful thing I've ever seen. But obviously,
Yeah.
it's fairly basic. But yeah, I just got addicted from there, and then it was just a case of following links whenever I can find them, and just building up a quite a large bookmark list, and then constantly searching through it. And then one of the things I would do is if I found a particular Japanese website, because I can't read Japanese or understand it, but I would hover my mouse over the links on the Japanese website, just looking for things which said in English. The hyperlinks would be in English, and one of them would say video or media, and I think, there's something there, and then I would find videos. So yeah, it was just too much time on my hands, and uh, just getting into that game at that particular time in a big way, because I'd always played Street Fighter because I was a Capcom fan growing up, but I'd never got into it or understood them properly, like you see in tournaments or competitive fighting
Hmm.
scenes. It was always me playing the CPU or um, seeing friends now and then. But I think because when we got the internet, you find resources to explain how a 2D fighting game was working. Things like frame data and priority and all these other things. This was like unlocked information about the game which I didn't have before, which made me appreciate it more. And the obviously Third Strike's a very beautiful game to watch.
Oh yeah,
Um,
definitely.
it just it's very aesthetically pleasing in a lot of ways. So yeah, it just all came together at the same time, and yeah, that initial bookmark list just grew into finding places which were hosting Third Strike Media. I think places like um, A Show in Kyoto.
Third Strike is a fun game in that regard, because everywhere in the world there's like a Third Strike community somewhere. We we were talking about just the other ShoryuCast with Elder, which is an old school player, started playing around 2005, and he was talking about how in the Middle East there are Third Strike tournaments, and people were inviting the pro Japanese players to play there on those tournaments. It's kind of crazy how the game captured everyone's attention throughout so many years. My older brother is known as Riddler here in the Brazilian community. He's our best player, and for many years he didn't really have anyone to play, and it's very similar experiences in all these interviews and player, you know, player stories is what I mean. It's always like this game was really special somehow, and I just wanted to play it. Whether I had to search games, had to play the machine forever. It's fun to see how similar the mindset was for everyone. And you kind of answered one of my questions, which I was gonna ask later. Uh, we know about your YouTube channel and the work you do on Patreon and the historian thing, but I was gonna ask if you ever actually got into competitive Third Strike as a player, and what character did you use, who did you main, why did you pick him? I had this theory that the character you main in Third Strike says a lot about your personality, and in recent times we've had many controversial players here in our community, as is fighting games. Sometimes people want to cuss at other people. They want to be jerks. They want to do bad stuff. So pattern recognition shows us that Makoto players are notorious for being kind of toxic. I don't know if that is still reliable into other communities, but here in Brazil, the Makoto players are certainly something. Anyway,
Yeah, I think it's like the command grab is it attracts a certain personality.
Going back to the question, do you ever get into competitive 3S? Try to, throw yourself into tournaments, hop on 5K, and what character did you main, if you did, and why did you choose him? You notoriously chose Q for your representation here in our ShoryuCast, so I think it's fun to know those kinds of things.
Yeah, well, I think when we first started playing it, I say properly, but getting regular competitive matches was when they released the game on Xbox, and obviously the Xbox Live was brand new. So I think that was the 15th anniversary. So we had Street Fighter 2 Hyper Anniversary and Third Strike on that one DVD. And obviously Xbox Live allowing you to play online was a it's because where I live in the UK, it's not far from Manchester, but coming from like a small town, I didn't, the furthest I would travel was into my own town. I wouldn't necessarily go into a city like Manchester at that age. So when we got the Xbox Live, it was a way of playing it a lot more. And I think the character I did use right at the beginning was Q, and it was interesting because I played that game religiously on live for about 6 months, and then I want to go back to my friend in town where we used to play the Dreamcast version. Obviously, would pop it on, and but then whereas I was always lose against my friend where we were playing at his house, it changed where he would barely win. And so, yeah, that sort of progression, it was nice to see somebody beating someone I would very rarely take any wins off. Um, but yeah, it was Q, and then I didn't really pursue any sort of like serious competitive tournaments. I think the first one I went to, sort of like encouraged to go along to, was a UK tournament called Super versus Battle. Super versus Battle, a sort of like a play on Super Battle Opera at the time. But it was reasonably popular enough that Daigo Umehara came along to that and had a chaperone.
Oh wow.
And the chaperone was, I think, a guy called Kaz, and he was a good third strike player in London. So, yeah, there was a decent London scene for third strike, and so when online tournament, well, the offline tournament scene got big after Street Fighter 4's release because there was a draw because that had obviously exploded. Having a big tournament or an event, you could have a good player count turning up for Street Fighter 4, but it made side events like Third Strike possible as well. So yeah, I did go to that and had a picture taken with Daigo, or you never know, Daigo had a picture taken with me. Depends which way you look at it. But I did have a picture that someone from the scene had made where they'd swapped my face into, it was essentially the Third Strike character select screen, but they changed the queue into a photoshopped version of me, so it's my face in the hat. And then I think the guy who did the shirts, the photoshopping, he'd edited his face into his character and his friend's face into his another character. So I've still got that hanging up in the wardrobe. But yeah, that was a really nice thing because obviously, like, I'd been doing this for several years by this point, and people had never seen me. I'd never turn up because I wouldn't necessarily leave my town, and yeah, so there was a lot of attention when I went down, which I wasn't used to. But yeah, getting that T-shirt and wearing it, and then going to get my game signed by Daigo, and his eyes lit up when he saw the how funny the T-shirt was. So yeah, but yeah, I was pretty much stuck with Q for a while, and then because I'd never been a very good player, and I mean from the point of view of I don't have the dexterity because I'm a pad player, so I would always be handicapped
Oof.
moving across the stick.
Yeah,
Um,
pad's rough, man.
and I think it's just because I spent so long on a Sega Saturn playing Street Fighter games, I just couldn't. That's where my muscle memory is. So when we did get on Fightcade, I had a USB Sega Saturn pad, and that's the one I'd use.
Yeah, that's an amazing story about the tournament there and the shirt. We were actually aiming to make some Blue Wolves shirts a while back. Uh, we're still aiming to do those. It's just been ass. It's been really rough to find someone to make the shirts and then send them all over Brazil. Because Brazil is a big country. You run into a lot of problems because of that.
Yeah.
Uh, like I'm from South Brazil, and I mentioned
Mhm.
tournaments especially because of that. Brazil had this huge tournament. It's another topic altogether, but we'll get there. Uh, Brazil has this problem where I'm from South Brazil, like the many states, and way down south, the last one, that's mine, that's the one I'm at.
Mhm.
And then there's like going a bit further north, just small bit. There's São Paulo, there's Rio de Janeiro. Then you have this entire part of Brazil, which is huge, which most people ignore, in media usually. Like North Brazil, Northeastern Brazil. It's a huge country. And
Mhm.
even to play online, lag is a gigantic issue
Yeah.
because internet providers here are garbage. So what happens is the internet connection can either go directly. I don't know how to explain this. I'm not all that knowledgeable about tech, but that's how they explained it to me. It can either go directly from you to the player, or it can pop all over the country, take a longer route, and you'll lag horrendously.
Yeah.
And I had this experience recently. I lagged a lot with this specific player. He said, "Look, I'm gonna throw a Hail Mary here. I'm gonna turn on a VPN. We're gonna try again." With the VPN, it was 30 ms. Like it's ridiculous, how routes work here. And because of that, tournaments are an issue. To organize a tournament in Brazil, it sucks. It's so fucking complicated. Cause if I want to go to a tournament, I gotta, you know, purchase a plane ticket and go somewhere, or I organize it here and people won't be able to come. And in other countries, usually that problem is mitigated because of the country's size or whatever. And Europe is known for its fighting game scene. I plan on asking you that. You mentioned you're from the UK near Manchester. There are players from France specifically, if I recall, like Billy Kane, those kinds of guys. And Europe has had an interesting scene playing Third Strike. Do you ever participate or communicate with them? Because again, these communities, they're not always documented. Let's put it that way. So I had no flipping idea there was a Third Strike scene in the Middle East, and then to find that out, it's kind of insane.
Yeah.
So how is the
Yeah.
community in the UK? You mentioned that you live in a small town, so not many players, only your friend there. How was it, to talk to people, to go to this event, to know there are tournaments, and if there were any others or nearby, th- how was that community experience on Europe?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, obviously, when you get the internet in those early years, then you become aware of what's around you much more. Like discovering there's actually an arcade right at the bus station in Manchester Piccadilly bus terminal station. Now you wouldn't know it had an arcade games because at the front of it it's a sort of gambling machine or fruit machines, as you'd say in here. You put money in and you start. It's like Vegas, um, but it's obviously like it's just a shop, quite a big shop, but a shop which is just mainly catered to people gambling small amounts of money, on slot machines and similar. But right at the back, obviously the man who maintained the machines liked arcade games, and he had several cabinets at the back, and one of them was set up for Third Strike. So when you first go to Manchester and get off the bus station, if you can brave through walking through some interesting people to get to the back to see these games, there are small little local groups of people who meet up to play an arcade cabinets, and there was a Street Fighter, First Strike, although small, and then you had a nice little Tekken community there, which was a bit more popular. But London, they had some big arcades which persevered, because in the UK, arcades sort of like died a death in the 90s.
I think
Around the time
everywhere
that,
they died around that time.
yeah, I think when like the home consoles got a little bit more powerful and into 3D, it was like why would you go somewhere and pay 50 pence to play something you could probably play at home? Although you wouldn't get necessarily the exact same experience, it's cheaper on the long run.
Yeah, it's similar
Um,
enough. And with the arcades, you put a coin in, instantly lose, get another coin.
yeah.
It was kind of similar to gambling, I was gonna mention, so kind of checks out, with the whole.
Yeah, well, I think Manchester got a very large out of town shopping mall. I think one of the first ones, well, not the first ones, but the first one in the north of the UK, called the Trafford Centre. And again, it was sort of like when we first went there looking around, I realised they had a large Namco station arcade, and in there was Third Strike. So I remember, I think that was the first time I played it, uh, and I obviously got beaten really, really badly. But even getting beaten by someone was still like quite thrilling. But it just looked, because I'd only seen this game in magazines at that point, so to finally see it running.
Magazines take that term takes me back nowadays because we used to have these gaming magazines down here too, and it would usually be like this very nostalgic 2000s-ish magazine with PS1 game cheats and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Gaming
I've still
changed a
got.
lot, right? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, well, with no internet, your only source of information was your monthly magazine, and I had I think a Sega magazine which covered the Sega Mega Drive, and then that officially turned into the official Sega Saturn magazine. So I've still got these sat on a shelf behind me, but I remember they covered a lot of import scene because there wasn't much domestically compared to say the PlayStation. So they had to like look at stuff that wasn't getting released in the UK. So they would. It was interesting that they covered a lot of import games from Japan, how to actually get your Saturn chipped, etc. And again, how to get some of these very intensive 2D fighting games because they were very big on the Capcom stuff. So you'd have these beautiful articles with the character art from like Marvel versus Capcom and similar on there, and they just looked, they're so good you wanted to eat them. So to actually get the chance to play them, but having them explain how to get your console chipped and import the game, and this was an official Sega magazine, so I'm surprised they got away with it in some respects. But yeah, so with regards to like scenes, like London was where it was majorly at, and there's a lot of early people my age essentially who had that early scene, which have all moved on. And the French, obviously in Paris, had a very strong scene, and there was a very early rivalry between the two. But the French had enough strong players that they would go over to Japan regularly and even field teams for in Super Battle Opera.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
we're we're very aware of that. That they went there. That there was that FT10, and Otana versus Hayao, I think.
Yeah, I think Otana and those there's sort of like a second generation of
Oh, he's so
pla-
more recent player, you mean?
I wouldn't say it's recent, but I don't I don't remember. But then again, I can't remember when I was the channel was quite popular in the early years. The French scene reached out to me and asked them if I would host. I would upload the ranking battle tournament called New, based which is the I think the name of an African wildebeest. I think GNUSZ. So they had this new series, and they would send me the videos by file transfer, and I would put them up. But yeah, they had a local ranking battle scene, and they thought it would rather than put something up themselves, it would be better if it would get the exposure if it was essentially shoved on mine. So they sent me there, but I just don't remember. But it might just be my memory failing me because I'm getting on. Seeing Otana on there, but he may have been, and I'm just misremembering. But I sort of his rise to prominence, or his those first attempts you mentioned, where he was really like exceptionally doing very well. Um, I think sort of came in the late noughties, early teens. I'm trying to remember. I think the early teens. But yeah, Billy Kane's always been strong, and I think they had a very good, strong Hugo player called Pisher as well. But again, with the UK scene, there was like a second generation that came out up after the original, and they would try and get the old heads to come down. So I know they would
That
have
sounds familiar.
they would have you know one of the big UK tournaments or like fighting game events down in London, and they would the Third Strike people would say what we would like to have. We would try and get people like what's his name? Shit, this is what I'm getting on. Naz would always turn up. Harmonaz, the Gookie player. He was
Oh
quite keen to
yeah,
come
no,
out.
yes, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
So he would always he'd be happy to drop in, and a few others. But I think a lot of them are just life had moved on. They were sort of getting on for middle age and married with children sort of thing. But Naz was always down to come out and bust out. But yeah, I think what made it more possible was obviously arcades had died, but this new wave of, well, not new wave, but there was a couple of early pioneering people where they had arcade cabinet experience because they used to work at the old arcades before they died, and then they used that knowledge to sort of buy up some cabinets and then set up a new place and on a different subscription, so you wouldn't necessarily pay per game, you'd pay on the door and everything was on free play. And that was run by a guy called, I can't remember his name, but he had the arcade was called the Heart of Gaming. Uh, so when he opened up his place for the first time in sort of a suburb of London, because obviously it was too expensive to rent anywhere in the central, that was the place to go to essentially run the early gutter trash tournaments when they came back. But there's a lot of like second generation players there, like CAC2, the Eleanor player, and 3J, the Makoto player, and etc. So that was when it sort of like Third Strike's second wind after the original release had sort of and enthusiasm sort of waned after the Xbox Live release. But yeah, even the UAE guys, they've been in touch, but I think they just have the means to ship Piero and RX out for um, events and similar. So yeah, they've got there's a couple of places in because I've got that map on Google Maps, of all these all these places which have Third Strike. So if you ever wanted to know if there was a scene near you, or even just a place to play it, you could look at this thing. And it's not extensive, but there's quite a lot of places on there. But yeah, there's a few places in the Middle East
Yeah,
where
I
you
definitely
can
like to
actually
check
play
that
it.
out later. Yeah. Uh, Here in Brazil, the first you were interested in it, so I'm gonna talk about it. We talked about it briefly in the international chat on the server. But arcade scenes already died here. Like, I don't think they ever really existed here in the same way you guys had it. Because Brazil gets everything like 10 years delayed, you know? So, I was born in 2003. I'm decently young. I played on a Super Nintendo during my entire youth, right? And part of that was because we didn't have much cash to buy anything new, and a lot of people still maintained their Super Nintendo consoles. Then, for decades, we stuck with the PlayStation 2. Piracy is really the way to go here because official games are incredibly overpriced. You know, currency differences, but you'd have to pay like 200, 300 for an official game. And if you bought a pirated game, the, these people they'd usually like, hey, you want to buy 3 games for $10? And it was like, I ain't gonna refuse that. We stuck with the PlayStation 2 forever. I say that because it's kind of crazy to hear from you that you guys actually were playing during the official launch with the arcade experience. That's a very distant thing for us. Our community began in arcade communities. I don't know if arcade was popular anywhere else. It was this social media thing before Facebook.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't know if it was popular anywhere else, but it was like a forum thing, and they started posting about Third Strike. They found communities there, and they decided to meet up and create a Third Strike community. And the Arcade Third Strike community, by tagging with the Guilty Gear community, they became the hit confirm guys who had the forum and
Ah,
everything. Uh, but the forum was already dying by like 2010, I want to say. A bit after 2010.
hmm.
And but the hit confirm guys, they organized this tournament in São Paulo, known as Heaven or Hell tournament, and it was basically this
Yes.
big national tournament. People would fly over to play, and it was insane. And then it started dying out as well. Because people eventually got tired, and you know, people are not coming. I'm not into it, and that's when the online community started thriving more and more. Because by about 2015, 2016, Riddler decided to try and start some groups, and that didn't work out that well. But eventually, the Discord servers started showing up, and the community started happening. But it was mostly all online in recent memory
Yeah.
because offline play was very, very difficult for us. And online really changed the landscape of how not only fighting games, but video gaming as a whole worked. I was gonna ask you. You mentioned that tournament where you met Daigo. Do you have any footage of that? Do you upload it to your own channel? Do you know if it's lost media or?
No, I think that tournament still exists online in YouTube. I think it was under the old. Again, sort of like the UK fighting game forum was Neo Empire, and then in the same way, like Shoryuken or SRK was the US's, and hit confirm for yourselves. And with Italy, I think their forum was AEX. Um, so I was on quite a lot of forums because obviously, with my age and rise early on the internet, it's where you did most of your early online stuff. So I've never really transitioned much to anything else. I'm still on an old UK forum, but uh, it's not fighting game based. It's just it's video game based, if anything, and off topic. But the um, yeah, those boards. I remember going to the hit confirm boards because and the Italian one as well, because of the sort of the knowledge there. There was people who had obviously much more knowledge about the stuff than I did, mainly because they could understand the language or they'd been over there and could tell me more because I'd never been. So I know I used to go to the Hit Confirm forums, to the Third Strike section a lot, just because the user Bullet was constantly posting brand new
Oh
information.
yeah, Bullet. The legend
He
says
was
he's the owner of that Third Strike channel that recently stopped uploading.
well. That was my. Someone asked me who had that channel, and I didn't know, but I thought based on just someone, the only person I knew who constantly was abreast of new footage and posting about it was Bullet. And I thought if anyone was doing the Third Strike channel, it must be him as a sort of an outlet for when that
Yeah.
forum died. Um, but yeah, I'd love to get in touch with him because essentially he was similar to a couple of the people I know where
Yeah,
we
I
like to.
sent him an
I'm not very
email.
good at the game, but I like to catalog it. That's where I've got.
Yeah.
If I can excel anywhere in it, it's like cataloging things.
Uh, I
Uh,
emailed him. I was like, hey, are you Bullet? Why did you stop uploading? Are you alright? Do you need any help? I don't know what's going on. He never answered me. But legend says it's Bullet. We'd never know for sure. I've asked a lot of people about this. I've asked Elder, which is the 2005 player, tournament champion, old school. I asked him, hey, do you know who that is? Because people used to say it was Bullet. He was like, I think it's Bullet, but I don't have confirmation. And yeah, so I guess the mystery is still ongoing.
it's almost like he found, if it was him, it's nice he found an outlet. But I was like, I always felt like, come and let's do something together with the guys. So like constantly like documenting stuff in spreadsheets. Um, I like doing that. I get the impression you might like doing that as well.
Oh, I definitely do. You are very correct on that.
Um,
Even your channel actually, because most people don't get to watch all of that, right? You start uploading, then there's thousands of videos, and you know, the regular player who just joined the server and, hey, does anybody want to play? How do I learn this character? They have zero clue. They don't know who the top players are. But Riddler and I, we're both very into tier lists and organizing things. So we even started like writing down the results of top players because I told him, look, we have this ranking system here in the server. I think it's pretty reliable. I think it's reliable. I think we can use it to measure how the Japanese go against each other. Because for the longest time, at least here in Brazil, in the communities, we used to say like, okay, there's Tominaga, Mimura, Chansu, all those Japanese players, and we know
those,
Mimura is the strongest probably, but we don't know how the others fare against each other, who's better than who, how did their sets go, and Riddler and I, well, mostly me, but I started going through every league battle and writing down, okay, so Matsuken usually beats Tominaga, so I can estimate him above here, but Tominaga beats Furu, and Matsuken struggles more against Furu, so there's another you know measure to use as reference.
mm,
We use the exact same logic that we use with the system in our server, because to get into the higher ranks here, you need to beat everyone from the other tier. You need to be on a
yeah,
tier of your own, right? Because say if there are three players, A beats B, B beats C, C beats A. So nobody's in a tier of their own. They're all trading sets.
yeah.
And now A beats B and C. Okay, A might be onto something. We might need to upgrade.
Mm,
Uh, we worked on that. and we started trying to grade the top players. And it's a very easy opinion to find, by the way. You don't really need to watch much 3S to get into this opinion. But we reached the conclusion that Kuroda, Nuki, KO, and Deshiken are probably the four best of all time. There was a whole ShoryuCast dedicated to it. If my spectators are getting what I say, despite the language change, go watch the first one. It's pretty good. Uh, but yeah,
Mm.
we started grading them on that. Japanese players really find Boss to be really really strong, and based on the results I've seen at least, I always found that awkward because he is definitely an elite player, but he doesn't stand out like the other ones do. So
Mm.
you'd watch a league battle, especially the ones uploaded by you, by the way. Thank you. You have no idea the impact you've had on communities everywhere. But Nuki appeared and was like, okay, he beats 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Someone beats him on an FT1. Then okay, they go all the way back. It's Nuki again, so he beats like 7 guys in a row again. Usually gets promoted,
Mm.
and it's like it's a different thing. It's a different breed of player. Those four is the general opinion. I was saving this question for a bit later into the podcast because I think it's gonna take a while, but it's definitely the most important question, which is we know, or at least we should know if you're watching this podcast, that you put this amazing effort into archiving the tournaments, the league battles, some old school long sets. I wanted to know how does that process work? Because you need to find the footage. Maybe if you found it on some old form of media, you need to convert it to your computer. And there's a process of finding it too, of going to a website to purchase it if there's a need for that, or the Japanese videos websites like Nico Video. I want to know how your process works, how you approach this entire effort you've put in.
Well, initially it was just a case of at the very early outset of the channel, it didn't have the purpose it has now. It was just a case of I had been saving all this footage, and I'd gotten into a routine. So you had a hard drive full of third strike matches, but there was no way of sharing it with anybody. Really, you could host it yourself, but it would be prohibitively expensive, and there was no video sharing websites. Um, So when YouTube came along, that just looked like something that was doomed to fail because it must cost them a fortune, an absolute fortune. Um, but once they'd been going for a number of months, and I think Google realized that actually this sort of captured the zeitgeist with regards to like video sharing. So rather than come up with something new, we will just buy it. And at that point, I think, well, if Google have bought it, it's not going to go bust. Therefore, I can join YouTube and start uploading and sharing this hard drive of matches. And it won't be for nothing because the worry was I'd put all that work in and it just, it would die. The website would die, and there was what was the point?
Yeah, especially with the early websites on the internet, like everyone kind of had
Yeah.
one, and it could just vanish.
I mean, the Japanese had several places. There was Zoom with an E. I got a lot of Game 41 footage from there, but that doesn't exist. And then there was an outfit called Ustream that did a lot of Japanese streaming or like put videos up. And I got some of that, not all of it. But I think for the Japanese, Nico became a sort of de facto YouTube over there. But again, it was all in Japanese, and they didn't have any English options. And so what happened was, when I moved from downloading things to finding videos which are essentially streamed elsewhere, that's when I created the Google sheet, the spreadsheet, with regards to like tracking the information of the links to all this stuff. Had I downloaded it? Had I uploaded it? And I would save all the information, because I think my error very early on was when I would go to a website and save the information, I would overwrite the file name or similar just to capture not who was playing, but the characters. And obviously I would lose the players because it was all in Japanese and I couldn't read it anyway. So I was losing the information. So if it was restarting, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't edit anything. I would just take it as it was, so the information would always be there to reference. But even some websites, like there's one of my favorite matches is a random website I found completely by chance, just in one of my 1 in the morning clicking through links on Japanese websites sessions, just trying, seeing where it would take me. And I found a place called GameCap, which is an arcade, and had direct download footage, and they had a lot of download footage that they hadn't taken down. So there was an opportunity there to essentially like capture all of it. But one of the weird things is if you don't have the language pack installed, you try and look at a Japanese characters on your screen, and it's just it's just nonsense, or dingbats or wingdings.
Yeah, Japanese is a weird language. We have one or two players that have knowledge on the language, but 90% of us have zero clue. Riddler and I started being able to read katakana because of just constant reading the names of the players. So
Yeah.
we memorized the syllables, but it's not
You see,
actual
I could read
knowledge.
it. I can, but I very much like you. If I see Roshikari, I know,
Yeah,
I know what that
exactly.
looks like.
Y-
But again, like if you hadn't had the language pack installed on your PC, when your browser tried to render the website, it wouldn't show you the Japanese characters. It would just show you odd, weird
yeah, I can imagine.
wingding stuff. So I didn't capture some information. But anyway, this game cap, they had this. I think it was a young player called S, just the character S,
Yeah.
and I'm certain the Makoto player was Boss. Might be someone else, but I think it's Boss. And it's one of those where it's the shortest beatdown you've ever seen, to the point where even when S activated Jinai Jin, you know, I think it's Boss essentially dashes in while he's had this activated, and then S essentially does like a low kick, starts whatever button he puts out immediately. Boss has dashed up right into his face, down parried, and essentially Karakusa'd him immediately, and that's it. And it's just a monstering. It's wonderful to watch. But if I hadn't spent a bleary-eyed 1:30 in the morning scrolling through God knows where, I would never have come across it. So just having YouTube as a place to share nonsense like that was wonderful, but it didn't necessarily always capture the information. So there's a lot of early stuff which is my focus now, where I'm trying to essentially find the information originally and update the descriptions and the titles to actually account for what things actually are. Now I'm a little bit more better informed about it. But so it was just a case of sharing with my hard drive. And once I got sacked from a job, actually, because one of my first jobs out of university was at a firm in Macclesfield, but it's in the UK. But they had amazing internet access, and I a spool of CDRs full of, or essentially I'd backed up all my hard drive onto these CDRs, and I just took them into this job and
Oh, gee.
uploaded them. But they were uploading them in like seconds compared to at home, it would take ages. So yeah, that didn't go down too well with my employer, and yeah, I was leaving that job pretty shortly after. But I did upload, a lot of material, so I think I won. But yeah, very early YouTube. I
I'd
think
say
this is
that's
what
a win. I'd say that's a win.
there was in the early days of YouTube. If you went to the web, the home page, you could look at the channels based on how many videos they had. So you could see a ranking based on the number of videos. And I remember it was me and another guy who were in the top two, and he was. I was literally just putting up my hard drive, but he was putting up stuff from Game Trailers, if you remember that website.
I
And
don't at
we were
all.
the. It was like a, if you wanted to see like a video game trailer, and it wasn't on YouTube at the time, you would go to Game Trailers to see it. So he was downloading them and uploading them to YouTube because Game Trailers weren't on YouTube.
Gotcha.
But what happened was there was a race to get to the first channel with 1,000 videos, and I think he pipped me to it. I think he got to the first channel with 1,000 videos on YouTube. However, his account got deleted shortly after because I think Game Trailers caught wind of what was going on and asked Google to get rid of it. So I think I ended up eclipsing him in the end. But yeah, that's one of those weird things where early days you could sort channels by number of videos. But again, once the hard drive was done with and everything was moving to streaming elsewhere, I would just search through Nico to find things and catalog them, download them, put English translations on there with help, edit them together. Because that was the other thing with YouTube early, like there was quite heavy restrictions on how much you could put up. So I remember you couldn't put anything up over 10 minutes, which is why the Thong Boy Bebop 12 tutorial never went up because it's exactly 12 minutes. And it was like, I can't edit that. I'm not taking 2 minutes out of that glorious uh,
Yeah, I kind of remember this.
video. So it went up very late. And that was just because YouTube decided at that point, it says, well, we'll allow videos longer than 10 minutes now.
Yeah, I heard about that on speedrun forums because to upload a speedrun, sometimes it's hours long, and the first speedrun world record for Super Metroid, I think it was the longest video on YouTube for a while. Might be mistaken, but anyway, move on.
Yeah, well, it's funny, like, because it's been such, YouTube's changed over the years.
Oh, definitely, and not for the
So it
better,
was
man. It fucking
well,
sucks.
yeah, money's come into it. So this is like the other point I think is like what I'm sort of conscious of is at the time I was just sharing my own hard drive, and then it was just keeping on top of all the new footage that was coming out in these places, which a lot of Western people wouldn't look at. And then it gets to the point when they um, started moving over to YouTube itself, about 2015, I think. What the nature of what I was doing was sort of changing. So whereas before it's just you're doing something because it's something you've always done and it's helpful, to the point where you actually may be what would be considered like a content vulture, someone who's taking other people's content and putting it up for yourself. And I think that became an issue more recently, just because YouTube allowed you to start monetizing the channel. So there was essentially money involved. And it was sort of interesting. So that my period in my life where I sort of tailed off trying to keep on top of it as much sort of coincided when a lot of the Japanese arcades like GameSpot Versus and Game Newton moved over to YouTube. because I sort of think if I carried on downloading, editing together, putting into English, and then re-uploading, that would have been caught as essentially
Yeah, which is kind of stupid in my
copyright.
opinion.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do is go over what I've already got
Yeah,
and
the reason I
put some
find that
information
stupid
in.
is because even now, like, oh, I'm gonna watch a Japanese stream on Newton, whatever. You go over there and there are no English, you know, Roman letters. You have zero clue who's playing sometimes. And not even
Hmm.
that, even the name written in Japanese isn't there sometimes. So how am I supposed to know? They
Yeah.
have moved to YouTube, but they haven't done that in a way that helps Western players to follow their content or understand what's going on. Which is why,
Yeah.
Riddler and I sometimes we found like a video or something. We tried to translate it using Google Translate or something like that to figure out who's playing, what happened, who won. It's very annoying, dude. I don't know how they consider that stealing content. At this point in time, it's, this dude's, you know, doing you a favor. The way I see it, like if someone translated, the Blue Wolves tournaments to English, that's a favor. That's taking my content to a whole nother crowd that I don't have immediate access to because I need to produce this content to my community, and it's all
Hmm.
in Portuguese. But I find that really stupid. I find how YouTube works now really, really stupid, especially with the music copyright thing. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you can't have like this 10-second clip of music, otherwise you get taken down and it's a copyright strike. It's like Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, I'm sorry for
Yeah.
ranting, but
Well, no, it's right because somebody did a remix or a music video. Well, essentially, they produced some music which used pretty much without a great deal of changing Gookie's stage music. And I think it was about 4 years ago. I would get copyright strikes coming through because they said the video I had was copying um, this content from another place. And I had to point out to them, I says, no, the person who's made this music has, in 2019 or 20, is actually used music from a 1999 video game, and the videos that you're copywriting strikes are essentially just matches played on Googie's stage. Um, you know, 8 years before this music was produced, that you're saying. So I just had to constantly like kick back these sort of spurious copyright claims just because they were getting caught up in the algorithm that they were using.
yeah, the algorithm fucking sucks. There's this.
Yeah, because if you're not careful, a couple of people have had, and then it sounds like it's come back again, but the channel just disappear.
Yeah, they delete your channel, zero fucking archive or whatever, just boom, and it's done. And if you didn't save it anywhere else, you're kind of fucked. But
Yes. So I think that's why I got very paranoid and nervous. So and why I'm not necessarily active with a lot of new stuff because, but I sort of want to capture the new stuff, but in a way which doesn't tread on toes. In the same way, if I do have stuff from uploaded more recently, I've generally gotten permission from the person who recorded it now, just to as a. So what I'll do is I'll say, well, you've got this old YouTube channel. You haven't put anything on there in 9 years, but you've captured, your tournaments for an arcade that's long since died. Um, but you were the person to put them up. Do you mind if I archive them? And what I'll do is I'll give them English translations and I'll put the plays in there, but I'll also add all the all those players' matches into this database, so they're sort of captured and they can find it again. And they seem to be down with that, and they say, yeah, that'd be good. So I'm sort of working on that really, just like finding old YouTube channels, the person who's put it up. I'm backing them up anyway, so I've always got a local copy of it, and then them just saying like, well, before I actually publish it myself, I'll just get permission first. Like I'm doing some from Arcade UFO in the States currently. They sent me all the tournament footage that they'd recorded in their old location before the place moved. But again, the guy who ran it was happy for me to sort of archive it properly for him, so it was somewhere rather than a lot of times it's just on random people's YouTube channels. But if it's nice if that Third Strike channel was officially recorded somewhere they considered like an archive proper.
Yeah. So that's how your process started. But I heard at least that you'd find VHS tapes and CDs and find footage that way. Is that true? How does that work? Because I heard that. I'm not sure if it's true.
It is true. So what happened was when my employment started paying me better, they decided we should actually give you paid more than what they were paying us. And that uplift in salary
Which is always
suddenly
good.
meant yeah, well, I think they decided because my job at the time was working in hospitals and consenting patients to donate their essentially the cancer that we're having taken out to cancer research, because we had like a tissue bank. So I would visit these patients, get the consent, and go to their operations. And when the surgeon was finished taking what they were taking out, I would run off with it, and pathologists would give me bits of it if there was enough, and it would all get stored away for use in future research. But that consent aspect was what they considered enough of a responsibility to pay us essentially two salary bands up than what we were paid. Because at the time I was doing that job, I was also working in as a barman in a pub 3 nights a week to sort of like supplement my wage. But when the rebanding came in, that wasn't necessarily a worry anymore, but I kept it up and I used the spare money to save up and started buying essentially Street Fighter 3 merchandise, like a little collection of paraphernalia wherever I could find. So I'd collect all the games released across different formats in all the different territories, and then it would spin out from like posters, and then because I'd been doing YouTube a lot, I'd always see or hear or get wind of DVDs or VHS tapes or events, and a guy in Japan who his sort of job was selling, a reseller of Japanese video games. He would keep an eye out for me for things that would turn up over there, and then get in touch and say, "Have you seen this? Do you have it? Would you like it?" And I'd say yes, and then spend the money. And I would ask him for certain things, in my late night trawling through Japanese websites. I'd end up finding a website that gives me information about something, and I would bookmark it and then say, "Could you find this?" And eventually he did. So yeah, so in like late, I think 2010 to 2013, I was buying a lot of Street Fighter stuff, physical, and again, so the Kuroda DVDs, I bought them in both because they had a redesign. I bought them in both redesigns, but in the second redesign, that's the Urine volume got released, but it's not released in the original aesthetic that they put out. But yeah, that's bought up all the Super Battle Opera, Third Strike discs, anything else. So I think like Baban Paku was an event, and yeah, just kept the Mikado
Yeah, yeah.
They released they released discs of their events, their tournaments and ranking battles. So there was I remember they used to have a poster at the front of the arcade. Had a couple of pictures of, and it said what volume it was, and it told you what the game was. And I sent the guy over, says like, try and get every single third strike and or second impact volume, and he did. So yeah, I was just like hoovering up anything I could find, and yeah, VHS tapes turned up, and I had to have them digitally transferred. So I had a DVD backup, and then I'd have a second disc backup, but that was like an MPEG on its own. But yeah, they were Skillsmith VHS tapes, where
Wow.
he'd do. They would essentially they were arcade testers for Capcom. I think the guy's called Bug, and he's still on Twitter on Blue Sky, but he was one of those. He's like a desk, a very early desk, if you know desk. Um,
Yeah, I heard about him.
these people who have ridiculously talented execution, and yeah, they would just do these daft things. So yeah, I would they would release these little they would have this little VHS club, and they'd be releasing these exhibition videos and combo videos on VHS tape for these different Street Fighter titles and other stuff. And in those VHS releases, they would have these little booklets explaining what was in the catalog and what you could buy. So I know some of them had like 3 or 4 version releases. And yeah, I'm just obsessed trying to track those down. And I've got a few of them, and the earliest one I got, I think it's probably maybe the earliest or the second earliest combo um, video for Third Strike. It was like in 1999 when they released it.
Oh,
And I think there
jeez.
was an earlier one. This is the first dedicated one. There was an earlier video which had a couple of titles on it, and I think it had early Third Strike, and I'm still looking for that one. But the first dedicated Third Strike combo video I've got, and yeah, it's wonderful when those turn up, and I just drive up the road to a guy I know who does digital transfers. It's just so exciting to see what's on there. But
Oh,
then
I can
again, like
imagine. You know.
on Japanese Twitter, I think Jay, the Ryu player, he put a picture up of a box full of VHS tapes, and I'm like, what's that? And you're looking on the spines of what they've written on them. It's like some of these spines have Street Fighter 3 written on them, and I'm like desperate. I'm like, would you consider selling those? Are you going to archive those? Are you going to back those up? Would you let me pay to have them backed up in your country and then you share the file? That's the sort of state I'm at, where I'm like, if I spot anything, I'll record what it's happened. Of like somebody's got something there at very early doors footage of something going down, and I would love to catalogue it and document it.
Yeah,
Please
I
let
know.
me
I know
back.
exactly how you feel, actually. Because it's so weird for those things to be forgotten and just vanish, and suddenly it's lost media, right?
Well,
It's.
I mean, yeah, Jay's essentially the only reason why Jay posted it on Twitter, this text, is because his mother found it in the loft. They found some of his old stuff in his old room, and he's like, "Do you still want this?" Whereas, and it's like, "Yes, I do. If he doesn't, I do." But again, like some parents just throw out. I mean, we've got stories on the forum of essentially like people's parents throwing childhood stuff out, which is worth a fortune in some respects, but in other things, it's like they would have kept hold of them if they could have done. But the parents says, well, they haven't touched this in 23 years, so they're not going to miss it if I take it to the tip. But we
Yeah.
do miss it if we knew about it.
Oh, definitely. Those kinds of situations always fucking suck. Like, uh, I think everyone has a personal experience regarding that. Like, hey, where's that thing? And your parent says, "Oh yeah, that old thing. Oh, I threw it away. You weren't using it anymore." And you're like, "Oh, hell no. What did you do? Why would you
Yeah,
do that? That was mine. It
I've
wasn't
got
yours."
I've got a relative who would go round to his house all the time at the weekends because he had a Super Nintendo, and I know for a fact he took all of his carts out of the cardboard boxes and put the cardboard boxes somewhere else, so they essentially wouldn't get damaged. And he moved house recently, and I said like, "Oh, did you take all the cardboard boxes with you?" And he says like, "I can't find them." And I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Oh no.
And he says like, "I think his partner at the time found them and thought, what's this all this cardboard rubbish, and recycled it." And
Oh
oh my god, like
jeez.
he's got all this Super Nintendo. It's just carts now where he had immaculate boxes with them. It's like, oh, it
Yeah.
just my heart, my heart sank for him.
Oh
It just
yeah, no, definitely. Jeez. I still have, but this Super Nintendo I own has one of the craziest stories I think any console might have ever had, because very recently we had this huge tragedy down here in my state, where it started raining and the cities couldn't, contain the rain and the rivers, the lakes. So the entire city was basically flooded, and thousands of people lost their homes, lost everything they had as property, and when that was happening, we were very late to get out of our homes, or at least my family was, is what I mean. And I thought, okay, what do I need to get here? I got my computer, which had tons of things I was working on. On Blue Wolves, I end up working on everything. So I'm working on guides, I'm working on videos, I'm working on so many things. I can't leave this here, otherwise I'll lose, you know, way too much. So I got my computer, and I decided to take the Super Nintendo console with me,
mm.
cause obviously some money I had lying around. I didn't have many personal things to carry, so I decided to take the Super Nintendo. And before it was mine, it was Riddler's, who's my older brother. And before it was his, it was my father's, I think. And before it was my father's, it was one of my uncles. It passed down hand to hand through generations, right? And
Mm.
it's like this, it's almost golden now because it has deteriorated, right? And yeah, we're still playing it. I bought a CRT TV to play it on, and it's sitting here in my room. My wife has been playing on it. Uh, it's like, and part of the story is that the cartridges, some of them got flooded. I couldn't take the cartridges with me, so I took the
Mm.
console at least. I can buy other games later, or at least that was what I had in mind. And after the water came down, we opened the houses up. There was this metal thing. I don't know what you call it. But we kept the cartridges there. We opened it, and the cartridges were there, a bit deteriorated, sure. But we tried them, and they still work. They still work. And one of the biggest losses we had was this Killer Instinct cartridge, because most of them are, you know, non-official cartridges.
Yeah.
But the Killer Instinct one was original. It was like the
Oh,
black cartridge with the full gore
yes.
on in front of it. It was so
I know the
fucking
one.
cool. And unfortunately it got flooded, and I was really sad about it. Another thing that got flooded was Riddler's championship trophies, because he's Brazil's best player by far. Like, and in the Heaven or Hell tournaments, he won 3 in a row, and an extra one that happened at a bar. So in one of the Heaven or Hell tournaments, Elder, which is this old school player I've mentioned hundreds of times already, he was organizing a tournament in a bar right before or after, I don't remember, the Heaven or Hell tournament. But it was basically all the same players, right? So it was like two Heaven or Hell tournaments back to back. And Riddler won 3 Heaven or Hell tournaments, this tournament in the bar, and he stopped going because he felt like, well, it's a bit expensive, to travel, go there and play. But every time he won, he got this first place. Uh, I don't know what you call it. It's like a it's not a plate. It's this, but maybe it is like a metal plate, is what you'd call it.
Mhm.
And he'd get some other memorabilia. He'd get a drawing sometimes, or a poster, whatever. And when we first opened up the house after the floods happened, there wasn't much we left there that had emotional value to me. But I looked at the trophies and everything, and they were washed away. They were completely destroyed, and that really hurt me in a way the other things didn't. So I think losing something with that, where you had an emotional attachment to it, it's a horrible, horrible feeling.
Yeah.
But I was gonna talk about this. Another horrible feeling, at least for me, is losing media. I hate that. Like, hey, remember, I don't know, your fourth birthday party? And you're like, yeah, I remember we recorded things and whatever. And the footage is nowhere. You lost it. Like that, those videos of you as a kid, they're ruined. They don't exist anymore. That hurts me. And I don't know
Yeah.
why exactly it hurts me. I am a nostalgic person, but not regarding myself, Uh, but I ended up finding out about Hikone Kan's story, and that particularly got to me because you mentioned the 2 a.m. clicking sessions, right? I 100% identify with that because it's 1 or 2 a.m. I'm watching 3S videos at like 2 times the speed by now, and I'm writing down the results and trying to find footage and trying to find stuff. And I think it was yours actually, uh, the G Up videos, which were some of the first third strike tournaments, and at least in my knowledge. And
Yeah.
like there was Hikone Kan was a champion, and I read about him, and he passed away. That
Yeah, he died in a car accident.
that got to me because in all those years, ever since 2005, nobody in the Brazilian community that was at least particularly known that we know about, who was active and we remember them vividly. Like, not, I don't know, a random player who showed up once and never again, right? Nobody passed away like that. It hurt me quite a lot because nobody knows about this guy. He was a great player. He won tournaments. Why doesn't anybody know about him? And I made a video on that for my channel, for the Blue Wolves channel. Right now we don't have editors, so it's frozen, right? I have like 4 or 5 scripts from top to bottom. I really just need an editor, but that I felt like I needed to talk about that. Like, uh, picture that, I don't know, in a few days or weeks or months, somebody passes away. We'd like to remember them. Those kinds of stories really get to me. And I was wondering if you have any other story like that where it's something you'd like people to know. Uh, Here in the West, we don't usually get these stories, or they did. What it means, they don't go through all of those stages of somebody tells someone and then it's in the internet and there's a video. It doesn't reach us. And as a historian, as you yourself put it, and I agree with that term actually, but you certainly have come across stories like that, or at least something similar, where it's something you'd like people to know. A funny story, a joke, a particular tournament that had a fun conclusion, something you'd like to share regarding a particular experience, a particular point in time that you wish people knew about.
Yeah, I mean with the Hakone specifically, they ran a tournament named after him after that called the Hikone Cup. And I believe you would see him most of the time in Ashos. I think that's where his local hangout was, Neo Amusement Space Asho. So yeah, my early stuff was, yeah, you would have like the Hikone Cup tournament. But yeah, he was a very strong Ken player and died in a road traffic accident, sadly. So they memorialised him in the event itself, in his own event, posthumously, which I thought was a nice touch, a nice way of memorialising him, is to have an event in honour of him. I mean, I'm not 100%. I mean, we do have one in the UK because I believe Kaz, who I mentioned, who was Daigo's chaperone when he was over in the UK. Yeah, he passed away not that long ago himself. So yeah, it does. And obviously he was I suppose what they call that, an OG in the UK third strike scene. So you go to the very early Neo Empire events where third strikers, you'll see Kaz playing. But yeah, it's sad when people go. So it's nice to have, when we try and capture information about events or players, it try to get the any interesting information around them at the same time. Um, it's a bit like I would love to know what happened to Masatsu Yaru, the Urian player. I think early looking at early footage, you would come across a couple of his videos where he's playing, and it's one of those where he changed the way you look at a character because it's almost like he's playing Urian as if Urian was, quarter circle. If his specials were all quarter circle,
Yeah,
he's
that
not. He doesn't
motion
look like he's
input character.
charging for anything. It's crazy. And also, he just didn't seem to care. So he was just, there's no caution. He was just like aggression full on 100% of the time, which usually mainly got hit a lot. But when he was motoring, he was wonderful to watch. And in fact, I think that's one of the biggest, one of the major top rounds or videos on the channel is literally like Sugiyama versus that Misatsu, that Necro versus Urine match, where it's just, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's where
I
it
might have
goes,
seen
they
it.
both win a round each. They both win a round each, and Sugiyama gets the, in the corner, the six elbows
The
and
elbow
urine
loop. I
juggle.
think I think I actually used that footage for the start of the Hikone Can video. Because at the start of
All
the
right,
video
yeah,
I introduce it, like, hey, they're the legendary players from Japan are well known by now. Like, you look at a green can and you think Deshiken, you look at a purple Necro, you think Sugiyama, but there's this guy people don't know about, and I
yeah,
really wanted to share that. I think if any of the elite players passed away, I'd be really shook, you know, because after watching them for years and admiring their work in a certain way, it's very, you know, the distance and the lack of information, then, oh, hey, yeah, that guy passed away, unfortunately. Or even if they didn't pass away, if there was some kind of story there, that's the kind of thing that interests me, that hits me on a personal level. And
yeah,
those stories, when you archive videos, part of what you're doing is you're making them immortal, right? Throughout the years, because of your work, this has reached everyone here. Riddler learned how to play by looking at the Japanese footage and copying it because he's really good at mimicking players. At least he's not very good at impressions, but it had a major influence. You through your effort, you've made these people forever present there. And in the same way, I think these stories need to be preserved. The same way the videos are archived. So it's a it's a thing of mine where I just hate lost media. I really hate it. Unless it's something incredibly fucked, then yeah, whatever. But like, oh yeah, that airplane crash audio, it's lost media too. Yeah, we don't need to hear those. I don't think we really need them. But regarding the stories and the players and these people, I think preserving it is something important.
Mm. Yeah, although there's no like, because the other one has just come to me now, because it's interesting. Like Asho's got a couple of characters that stand out. Like obviously Hikone's one. The other one's Umezono, the Chun-Li player, because he got into making games himself, and he made the fighting. He was one of the major people involved in that. He Tatsugari. It had very. You could tell Third
Yatagarasu,
Strike was an
maybe.
influence. Um, yeah, it was a very handsome 2D beat 'em up, but you could sort of see
Oh,
the Third Strike influence. I'll just try and Google it now. But yeah, I remember seeing his name in the development credits. So that's what he was up to. But he was a very early Chun Li player.
yeah, I know him. I don't know every single player, but I recognize the nickname. That's a fun story. Those kinds of things are fun to be shared and immortalized.
Yeah.
Um, as for you and your work, what's the next step, you'd say? Because it's 2025. You're still uploading once or twice sometimes. Uh, and there's a Patreon page, the website you mentioned. Where do you think the next projects for TheShend are? The next things you're gonna delve into, the next fixation that you're gonna have, the same way you had with those VHS tapes. And what should we expect
Uh,
from you in the following years?
well, the main thing is that the Patreon was there mainly as a way of cataloging events in a way which was, easy to access to. So, like, if you wanted to look at an event that happened, like an East versus West at GameSpot versus, and you just wanted an overview of who was playing, what happened, any interesting things to note, I would sort of try and capture that as on an event page, but it also gave me the excuse to go back and rewatch it because YouTube introduced chapters to the videos. So you could put a timeline in there and you would be able to split the video up into chapters so you could, it was easy to pass from the video when something was going to happen. So if you were interested in a particular matchup and there was a timeline in the description or in the comment, you could jump to it. So I was using that as a way of capturing the information um, as a way of also as a way of, I wouldn't say atonement, but essentially, if I'm going to carry on doing what I want to do, because I would upload a lot more if I didn't think it would get the channel killed, but I'm sort of wary about putting stuff up. So what I'm doing is, if I can um, collate what I've got properly, archive it properly, document it properly, um, then when I go to someone who I would like to upload the stuff from, I can turn around and here's the offer, which is like, well, this is essentially, it's not taking away from what you're doing. It's essentially archiving what you've already done, giving a full description, in both languages if need be, but also, a full breakdown of, the matches. It's a properly documented um, as like a secondary backup and as an archive. if you'd be happy. And obviously, a few people are happy to do that. But the idea is, if I've got something robust and demonstrable, so people can see it and say, I can see what this, is offering. And at the moment, I don't have it. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to build enough information using that matchup spreadsheet, and get a website together. So if you can go to a website and it's usable in both Japanese and English, so you could type in, the Japanese character of a player's name or even just the English version, it'll spit you out essentially the character page, the player's page, and based on the information in the database of what I've captured, you can see instantly things like what's the win percentage overall, the win ratio. You can also see the ratio of what super arts they use in the main character, and then it'll also tell you and it'll rank them by how many matches have been captured in the database. So if most of the matches are captured of Mikoto, that'll be the primary character that's shown. But it'll also show the other characters they play, and you can click on that, and it'll spit out this data as well about them. Where they're playing, what places they play, and again, it'll rank by where most of the matches appear. So if it's Asho's the main, the first one it appears, but it'll list the others in sort of order it appearing. So it's just a way of presenting this data in a useful way. Because one of the things I see in Discord is, like you say, you have new players come in, they want to learn about a character, and they say, well, who should I watch? And you might get a couple of players' recommendations, and they say, well, where do you watch this? And mine or a few other places get recommended. But if you type in that player into, say, my YouTube channel or someone else's, you'll get a lot of unhelpful videos because you just want to get to a match. Whereas I might have an event in which that player's name is present, but they never played because the rest of the team beat the other team.
Oh, yeah, that happens. I was doing that for Matsuken because he's one of my favorite players. As of recently, I've been watching other players way more frequently, but I really wanted to know how good he was and how he was faring against certain players, and I Google his name in English, in Japanese. I go through FG Psycho to see if they had anything written down there. I go through your channel, through Hismits. I don't know if you actually know Hismit, ironically.
I know of him.
Yeah, he also archived these FT10 sets, and those are very helpful as well. Because FT1 matches, they're really volatile. Usually they're not really taken that heavily into consideration. Because, like, the first match of an FT10, really anyone can win. But if we play Chit 10, this guy ain't beating that guy,
Yeah.
So FT10 is usually taken more seriously and everything.
Yeah, it's useful information, and I think that's the thing. It's like to get, and this is like the purpose of this sort of website is like, if I've got 5,100 videos and there must be tens of thousands of matches on there, if I can collate all that, then that should give you a nice fat data set to be able to essentially look at this information.
Oh, certainly.
Because the weird thing with Third Strike, well, Street Fighter 3 compared to other fighting games, is the super art system. So it's not just looking at players; you're also looking at players in particular super arts. So I know there are other places where you can do, matchup lookups, but with Third Strike and these super arts, it's a little bit more granular. So you really do need to, because someone said, well, who's a super art 2 player?
Oh yeah, because SA1 Ryu isn't SA3 Ryu. They're two different characters, pretty much.
And so it's like, well, who plays them? And it's like, well, and then you can, but with this website, you could essentially pick, right, I want you Ryu, I want Super Art 3, show me the players, and it'll show you the players, and you say, well, what order do you want to see these players in? the best win rate, most amount of matches from a particular area? Do you want matches from, because you might have someone with a very good win rate, but they'd only, there's not that many matches, and they're
Yeah,
from a sort of
100% win
area that,
rate, 3 matches.
yeah, but again, it's not, and it's not even, it's not in Tokyo. It's like one of the other areas in Japan. So it's like, well, do you want to focus down on the area where they've got a lot of strong competition? So this would give you that ability. So even if you didn't know anything about the game and you came in from completely blind, but you fancied this character and this particular super art, you should be able to, without being able to look on obscure discords or anywhere else, get this information. Because again, like with Piero, for example, the Remy player,
Yeah.
he's got a couple of other names which unless you're
Lucifer,
paying.
yeah, but he particularly likes changing nicknames. There's
Yeah.
I think the Frankie video, the Footwork 101 video, actually wrote like the player formerly known as Piero because of
Yeah.
Prince. So
Yes.
yeah, that's a
And,
good way to put it.
and
Uh,
again, like it's got Gen Mitsushin as well.
yeah, which is
Um,
like something like God. It means God something like
See, I don't know. I've not got that into deep. I'm just what I find is because I've got that player database as well of
yeah.
names.
I had the same
Um,
idea a while back, but it's just so hard to execute. And I had the same idea because of Wikipedia. I don't know if you know the website, Wikipedia.
I don't know if I do actually. And maybe I've come across it and I've bookmarked it, but what usually happens with me is I'll have somewhere, I'll have dozens of tabs up which I want to keep open, and then the PC has a fit, and then I
Oh
lose
yeah.
it all, and it's like, well, whatever I was working on, I'm not working on anymore. Um, but yeah, so just start
Wikipedia
something new.
is like this website for Street Fighter 2. It's not Street Fighter 3, but
Ah,
they put an amazing effort to have a nice website there. I really appreciate and admire the work they did because they had this matchup chart, which was the average, the sum average of every matchup chart made by the Japanese players. And on the matchup chart page, you could change it. Like, okay, you don't want the average. Maybe you want the matchup chart of this specific player. So you'd open it and it would change the numbers. Uh, the tier lists, same thing. So here's the Street Fighter 2 tier list, and this is the list they made on this specific arcade in this specific year. But you can change it and choose another tier list, and it will just change. And it's a really beautiful, beautifully designed website. And it had this grid. That's where I wanted to get into. They don't have it anymore. I don't know what happened with it. I think it's because most of the videos were dead. But it was like this huge grid, and there were top players, like top and by the side. So you'd be able to find every top player facing every other top player.
yeah,
And this was based on because they have this page where they recommend 2 top players for each character. So like, hey,
yeah,
for Ryu there's Shooting D and Daigo. For Ken there's Matsun and Aniken. And then there's the grid. Here's Matsun, here's Aniken, here's Shooting D, here's Daigo. And you just search the grid like a matchup chart and find their matches.
yeah.
That was so freaking cool. I want this, but for Third Strike. That's what I wanted. And I started making some research like, hey, Matsu can beat this guy, but he lost to that guy. And I was going through it for Yuki Otoku, and I was going only really through the players I was watching at the time. I was more interested in. And then I checked your Patreon, and you had basically the same idea through the website. And that would be, astounding to have. But I really hope the project comes along nice.
Well, I've got essentially like everything on the Patreon's essentially public. It's not hidden behind a paywall. And the idea is the money there is just essentially just keeps accruing, and I use it, or I haven't used it, but I'm using it for this website, and obviously I'm saving myself, and I have a matching amount of savings to what's on the Patreon at the moment to sort of spend on this website. I think the issue is this website itself is I don't know if it's expensive, but it's like I don't have the money to do it a second time, so I just need to find someone
Oh, gotcha.
trustworthy to actually get it done.
Do
Now there is
you?
somebody working on it, but again, just because if I went to somewhere professional, maybe it would cost 3 times as much. I don't know, but essentially, there's somebody reliable and sort of trustworthy working on it. But I think because of the amount of work it is, it's just slow going. Um, so I'm hopefully, because we had designs by Lineplex. He's done the design for it, which is the same. He does the brilliant flyers, if you've seen them, the posters for the Arcade Brooklyn Third Strike events.
I haven't seen
Um,
it. Can't say I
they're,
have.
they're, they're wonderful. He's a very, very talented man. But he also does the graphic design for the Jazzy Circuit.
Those
But
I might have
his
seen.
his style is sort of, I think, really conducive to essentially, excuse me, hay fever. His style is really conducive to conveying information and data really nicely. So I hope I can get something really quite nice up. So you would land on the basic web page, and it's up to you what you want to do. What are you interested in? You are interested in characters? Are you interested in players? Are you interested
Yeah.
in events? Are you interested in locations? And because the matchup database links all this information together, it's like you can go off on a little down a rabbit hole, digging out exactly what you want. And if you want to find something really bizarre, like I would like to see the few and rare cases of super art one Chun-Li. If you can get them, there might only be 3 of them, but you'll get them. It certainly be, but you would probably have had no chance of doing this um, unless you were already aware of them, which is slim to none.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it's just how do you? I think that's my issue is the website, the YouTube channel itself. It's like how do you make it more easier to get to what you
Yeah,
want
more
out
more
of it? But it's
accessible, more dynamic.
yeah, because it's just a massive block of videos. It's but even if you search, you don't necessarily get everything you're after. It's and you get the same results at the top all the time. So yeah, anything which um, makes that easier, and then I can present this slit looking thing to people in Japan and say, would you like me to put your stuff officially, with permission into this at the same time? Because the thing with that website is the matches. I don't necessarily have to have the videos on my channel.
Yeah.
They can link to,
It would
the
probably
original source.
make them feel less extreme about it. Having the footage there as opposed to having a re-upload, right?
Yeah. So I think it's like because if people are regularly watching, Game Newton streams and they're following it, it would be nice if they could essentially add the matchup information to the original video, maybe even in a comment, but they can put it in this matchup database.
Yeah.
And so when you went to the page for this
So
event, you can get, even though, like you say, you may be presented on YouTube with this Third Strike event, but there's very little of you being able. There's so little information unless you're native speaking that you can't really get much out of it. Whereas if you go to say our website's page on it, it'll have that all. It'll give you the information, so someone's done the work for you.
yeah, that's definitely something that will helped tons, at least on my end, because I really had this, that same feeling of like, okay, I want to see Matsukan versus Mimura. I want to see who wins these two guys,
Yes.
because I want to study the game. I want to become better at it, and it would be hard to find. Eventually, we, through hours of going through rank battles and tournaments and casual long sets and maniacs cooperation cups, we had a good idea of who beats whom. Uh, I also found this website. I don't know if it was a Chilean player or where it came from, but it has every single Super Battle Opera, the Togeki tournaments. It has
Mm.
every match registered. So like, here's who won. Here's the teams that face each other. It's like it's a forum wall, really. It's not really like you know something quite developed, but it had every single tournament's result there, organized by year. So it was damn good. It's very, very useful. I have this page where it's hidden and on Blue Oves, where I only search for results. I watch tournaments and I write down who wins. Sometimes I write down the results of our own tournaments because we have tournaments every Sunday. Um, so yeah, in this specific tournament, this is what happened. Uh, this is who beat whom, and that was really really like a change of mentality for me and for the other players. Before we, like I mentioned, way back in the beginning, we really only had the top players, but we had no idea. And I think the website is an amazing project for that. I really hope it comes through. Do you plan on having backend on it? Because maybe if you're not gonna host it individually to have backend, you might use GitHub. GitHub,
Yeah.
it's free. It hosts everything for you, as long as you only use front end. You can't use backend coding, backend programming.
I think the guy who's doing it has put stuff onto GitHub already as
Yeah,
part of his process. So I think that's what's happening. I'm not technically minded, so I'm not 100% certain, but I am sort of conscious that with essentially, in the Hakone fashion, we're all getting on, and you never know when you're going to get hit by a bus. One of the things I'm trying to do is once this thing is up and operational, I essentially want to just uh, similar to the Jazzy circuit, have it existing outside of my personal orbit. So it's an actual, educational charity project,
yeah, I feel you.
which people can join. And essentially, if anything did happen to me, essentially people could continue it
Hopefully
on as
nothing
an
happens,
ongoing
man.
project. Well, yeah, obviously not, but the idea is I'm thinking the YouTube channel and all the rest of it, it would be nice if essentially I can get it all nicely wrapped up into some sort of educational charity, and then I'm no longer solely responsible for it. And the same with Jazzy Circuit's an educational non-profit. So it's
Yeah,
just finding that fit, so I can, yeah, let other people essentially pick up the pick up the baton with it and take it in, the directions. So again, like one of the things is I only cover as a sort of a arcade footage, arcade matches. But that's not to say I've left the spreadsheet, the database in a way that we could essentially just add in Fightcade, and essentially you if you want to see these Fightcade specific matches, you just select that as well or include them, so people could add Fightcade matches and events to them as well. Because like Jazzy Circuits on has online Fightcade events as part of its remit. Um, but my channel at the moment, it's just primarily arcade only as a sort of so no even console events. Although that's not 100% true because the early UK events were all run on uh, I think PS2, or I think yeah, PS2 version of Third Strike, the anniversary edition. Um, so yeah, it's tagging them appropriately so people know if they want to be purists about it or if they want to be a bit more spread out, loosen their the restrictions. But like say, arcades more than adequate. But obviously, arcade's arcade.
Well, I really hope the project comes through all right, and that nothing happens to you.
Yeah, I'm not planning anything, but I'm 44 this year. Yeah, I'll be 44 this year. So it's like the years get faster, and it's like
Oh gee, I
I'm
hope they
sort of
don't.
conscious that I'm, if I don't do something, it'll just, 5 years get behind you, and you're still no further along. So, um, yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I'm ahead of the game to, move things off. Because the other thing I would like is obviously it's just me at the moment, with maybe like one or two others when they get the time, adding this information. But if I have this website where you can submit the information as well, I can make it more, communal. So it becomes like
Yeah, I feel you.
a scene project. So if people want to add information because they're watching other videos, I would love
Yeah,
nothing more than that.
where's a system and we can contribute to it. I got it.
Yeah, yeah. Because again, it's me. I'm just working through something which is the East versus West, working backwards. I think I'm up to like 100 and I'm working through 107th at the moment. But that's taken me 2 years to go from like 200 and something to 100 and something, and a few other bits in between. But
Yeah.
family life and modern working life just make it convenient to be as active as I used to be when in my 20s.
Yeah, hopefully time doesn't fly. I'm currently 22. I'd like to remain so. Uh,
You are in your head, don't you worry. Yeah, the way you're thinking in your head, it's just like the thing that's staring back in you in the mirror just seems like, is that me? You know, but
oof.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm still 21 in my head, but yeah, my body
Yeah,
doesn't look it.
I'm actually decently young in comparison to the more old school players, and at the same time, I'm decently old in comparison to the new players. So
Yes.
there's a lot of 16-year-olds getting into the game, and you know, as a
I think
community, I
that's
noticed that.
yeah.
As a
It's
whole,
very appealing. I that's the thing, like people pick up on it appealing. It's like well, all these people with this enthusiasm coming in, these like generations. Because like the when we discussed earlier, like you have this new um, group of people getting into the game because of a new release,
yeah,
and they've got the
and
time because of a particular age, either a very early 20s or late teens. And then again, like, as they get into like mid 20s to 30s, it's like some of them fall off for whatever reason. But you get these waves of people coming in with releases, whereas now it's like, well, it's a little bit different because I don't think they're going to make another major re-release of the game. Not since, well, it's Capcom. They love re-releasing the stuff they've already re-released. But with Fightcade, and it'd be nice if we could just capture these people and have them stay around a little bit longer. And if it's just make that a little less, take some of the make it a little bit smoother, less resistance in getting the information that they want. That because they're used to getting information very easily compared to what we used to, well, what I used to do,
oh,
which
definitely.
essentially it just wasn't available unless you were
Because
a
if you're playing like
pervert.
a League of Legends, for instance, a more modern game, more recent, you want a guide or something, or the best build, the current, broken items or whatever. You Google it and you'll find it. But
Yes.
for Street Fighter, the system at least we have in Brazil to get players improving is 100% reliant on community, on player to player information sharing. So we have this kind of age-old agreement here, where when you lose, you usually ask for help, and then the player who won has to help you, or at least say how he beat you. And
Yeah.
by doing that, we all improved very rapidly. Uh, some of the best players currently in Latin America started playing, you know, 2021, even more recently than that. So using this I help you, you help me kind of deal is how we work. But most other players from other games, they have completely different systems,
Yeah.
and having a website, and which is why we are trying to build a website as well, to have that somewhere, and you can just click here and read it instead of me having to tell you. Uh, some
Yeah.
things
And
need to be told, I think. It's hard
yeah.
to, as a player, I'm thinking now, because when we play, it's very similar to boxing. If I show you this, then that beats this, but I can show you this and then change and beat you. So there are habits which need to be exploited. There's a lot of nuance in Third Strike.
Yes.
Um, so those we probably will still have the need for a community and the feedbacks we give to other players. But as for guides of the characters and general information, we have that same logic where it might be the time to start not archiving it, but having a more dynamic way to share it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like when I had these Super Battle Opera DVDs when we discussed about buying all these things, but then when I went to actually look for information around them, like who won or teams, list of teams, that's hard to come by because the I think even on the Third Strike Japanese wikis, they'll give
It
you
really
that team
is.
that won, or maybe like the top three teams. But it was an event with something like 60 teams and with five or 3 to 5 players in them, and it's like, so where's all that information? And
Yeah,
it's
and,
just
and,
it's
and
like,
that's ignoring the qualifiers. I meant to ask you if you have any footage on the qualifiers on some of those Super Battle Operas, because I was trying to look for them, and finding the tournaments themselves isn't impossible. It's not like it might be difficult, but it's not hard. Like I can find like SPO from '04, whatever, on YouTube. But what teams qualified, what teams got eliminated before, there's tons of info which I have zero clue about. And I have these text files of the tournaments of every Super Battle Opera, the runner-ups, the champions of every Cooperation Cup, some of which I have zero idea, because from the 4th to the 9th Cooperation Cup, I have zero clue what happened in the middle there.
yeah, that's a major gap for me. So I think that's one of the areas I'm trying to essentially find footage
Yeah,
or
like
find essentially the
the only
DVDs.
thing
I
I
know a few
know is
people who
that,
have copies,
oh, you
but
do?
yeah, there's a couple of people like I went to an event last year in the UK because my friend Singo ran the Third Strike event there with some people. Um, I think Versus Fighting it's called the event, but yeah, he ran a Third Strike tournament there, and a few European players were there. There was a few Dutch players, and I know one of the Dutch players there had. He told me, he says like, "Oh, I've got Co-op Cup, volume 6 or something, the DVD." And it says, "I'm like, you must. If you don't want to sell it to me, that's fine, but you must, please." Rip
Yeah,
it, get it, because this is the thing. Like a lot of people these days, they don't have a DVD disc drive on their PCs. So it's like, please, like, I'll even buy you like a portable one to shove into
yeah, we really need
your
those. The
PC.
only the only info I have is that I think in Cooperation Cup 7 question mark Nuki was part of the winning team. And because
Yeah,
he won in one of those uh editions where we don't know what really happened, but I do know he won, He is the greatest Cooperation Cup champion actually, because
Mm.
Deshiken won thrice. Uh, Yakun won like twice as well. Rao won thrice, and Nuki would be the only player that I know of who won 4 times. And
Mm.
that's only because I watched a video where it was like Cooperation Cup 7 finals or something. And I asked people to try and look at it because it's a horrible video. I found it on YouTube, but it's like this camera footage of someone recording the stage and you can't actually see who's playing or the game happening. The guy was in the crowd and he picked up his phone, I'm guessing. But and apparently Nuki won. They announced it or something, and somebody told me, "Hey, I think I heard them say that Nuki won and was part of the winning team." So he'd be the only 4-time champion. That's major information for us. We try to keep track of who won.
Yes, yeah. Well,
And
there's a couple other people who've got other, because I've got physically, I think 13, 4, and digitally the first and the second. But everything else, like apart from obviously what Game Newton's channel's got, a lot of the I think like 10 onwards or 11 onwards. Plus, I think the early ones as well, 1 and 2, maybe 4. But again, yeah, there's quite a uh, big gap. That's what I would like to try and find. And again, like when we talk about forums and Bullet earlier, the Italian one, there was a guy called Fran, and he would travel to Japan, and I know he's got uh, an edition of Cop which isn't out there. It's a DVD release. I think it might
oh
be
yeah,
5,
you
and
gotta
it's
get,
like,
dude, you gotta get those for us, man. 'Cause, you know,
yeah. Again, it's like yeah, it's just pleading with people like please rip that thing and send me the ISO. If you don't want to send me the actual physical thing, don't worry about it. I'll pay you for it, but um, the ISO, please, and then we can actually just record what's going on.
yeah,
So I
because
think my master video sheets where I was recording where everything was being put when obviously videos weren't direct download anymore. I think I made very rough, rudimentary, Tugeki events, like the full list of the teams. Then they actually how the tournament went down and where the actual what do you call it? The fuck. You can see how matches go. Like this person went 2-0 and then
the
moved up
brackets.
the. Yeah, it's that sort of map of like that lines of
Yeah,
like
yeah,
players
yeah.
and names. So it just made like a rudimentary one of them in Google Sheets for the Tsukaki things. But with the um, qualifiers, I became aware of the qualifiers sort of later in Togeki's life and started deliberately capturing that information. So the early stuff I don't know, but some of the later stuff I do have a list of all the qualifiers and the footage of some of them as well if they made it available.
Yeah, those would be amazing to
But
have and watch, really.
well, if you go to the master video list, which I've got, and there's essentially a list of tabs based on events and
Yeah, you
arcades.
share
If you go
you share
towards,
the list here.
yeah, down there, if you're looking into Gek cabs, you'll see the ones where I've got information because they should all be complete from the point of view of the DVDs and the events. But some of the later ones you can actually see and link to the actual qualifiers.
That's a lot of info, yeah. As again, as a player, because I'm, you know, completely not tooting my own horn here, but I'm the second best, probably of, this entire side of the continent, and I really like to see the top players duke it out and try to study what they're doing, because that really goes into the decision making that a player must have to win. It's very important information, and to have that footage, there's like, oh, that's a lot of stuff to watch and mimic and copy. As a player, that would be quite the thing to have. We're running a bit short
Yeah.
on time. We're already having this conversation for a bit more than 2 hours. So I'm gonna head into the final stage of this conversation. Hopefully, it was a good one. I certainly enjoyed having you
Yeah.
here. Uh,
Same.
it's quite amazing and I don't want to say shocking, but it's certainly something because I started this group like overnight because Shadow was pissing me off. I told him, hey, we should. He actually was tilted. He messaged me, and he was like, dude, Third Strike is dead. Nobody's playing it. We need to do something. And I was barely playing the game myself, and I told him for some reason because I was fucking pissed off too about some other things. I was like, yeah, we need to open this server, and it's gonna be like a fighting gym. Every weekend there's competitions and the ranking system and the names, and we have to do it like this. And that was like 3 a.m. Right? That was really pissed off about something. And on the following day, Shadow texts me again. He's like, hey, dude, did you open the server? You start organizing the thing? And I was like, no. I was merely suggesting that was what we needed to do. And he was like, do it. And every day for like a week, he kept texting me. He was like, dude, open the server. Why didn't you open it yet? I was like, I'm not gonna open. And eventually, I did it, and it was 2021. And it really started as like trying to revive the game. It was kind of dead then after the pandemic. And to go
Yeah.
from that to major tournaments to people wanting, to pay or promote some stuff to, you know, interviewing people and reaching an audience I didn't think I'd have. Because Elder, who was the old school player, he hadn't played in ages, right? These guys were
Yeah.
like dinosaurs for us. Like, oh yeah, way back in 2007, Elder played the game. It was like most people have zero clue who that is. Uh, I had, I heard about him. I never seen him, but then to have him come back and play the game, partially because there's this new community. It has been a trip, and now to having you here, like, uh, I was watching those videos, and TheShend wasn't a person, right? It was a name of the YouTube channel, who I maybe a robot. I don't know who that is. Like it was so distant, and now it isn't. So that's a trip, you know. But yeah, I at the end of every ShoryuCast, I ask people to make questions, to come up with questions, and I ask them here. We have a few questions here. Riddler asked if you have any
Hmm.
favorite players, any particular player you enjoy watching.
Um, I'm very fond of Misatsu, but there's not much to watch of him. I really enjoyed when the Danizen events were starting up in earnest, and it got quite popular and spread to several arcades. An Alex player called Sakurada, he got really quite tasty quite quickly in that in that period, and I used to really enjoy when he came on or he was in the video. I was like, I'm definitely watching this just to see, an Alex, because the other Alex is, we'd obviously had KSK and Genki, but it was like he's a new one coming up out of nowhere and doing really well. So I would always keep my eye out for him. I enjoy watching him. Yeah, just anyone who's like even Vineo when he's just
Van Now is like an insane fucking player because he's the most inconsistent thing after the invention of
Yeah.
inconsistency.
It's like when he pulls it off, it's like amazing. I'm glad I watched that. And when he just
Yeah.
dies, it's like, oh well, something amazing could have happened, but yeah, the jungle had left him at that point. The juice. And yeah,
uh
and he's a pain as well for players' name because he has dozens of them. He would always like Electric King Vinay and all the rest of it. So in the
oh
player
yeah, I
spreadsheet,
remember
he
this.
was the one who ended up adding more columns to include various extra names and pseudonyms. He's terrible for it.
I remember there was a Danison event, I think it was, where there was like I forget exactly what it was, but it was like the Kuni Killer or something. The nickname he. Oh, I remember. It was like the machine of beating Kuni, something like that, but in Japanese, and it was Jiro, the Goki player. And he added that nickname just to mock Kuni, really. Like,
He's another one for dozens and dozens of.
yeah,
I've got
Tatsuoji, Jiro.
yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got names in here. I'm almost certain are him, but I haven't had it confirmed. But I'm
Yeah.
like, it's a Gookie player. It's not one of the others. It's his color, and he's at this particular point in the roster in the East versus West. I'm almost certain it's him, but I don't know. I can't.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not putting it down as AKA yet because I don't 100% know.
the other question was recently this player has been watching a lot of your videos regarding Rikimaru, the Chun-Li player.
Oh yeah.
What do you think of Chun-Li as a top tier character, and any thoughts on the Japanese Chun-Li top players? Was the question.
Um, I suppose in my early days, when I first started putting videos up, I had to edit down um, KSK's Gamers Vision, and I think when you watch Third Strike, the it does with single elimination trend towards obviously the bigger tiers, and the amount of times you would see if there was three Chun Li's at starting, there was two going to be at the end of it. If there's, in an eight-man bracket and there's three Chun Li's, you can almost guarantee there's going to be like a Chun versus Chun mirror at the final. So it's a little bit, exhausting in my immature days. And I think I even added a little comment to the video saying too many Chuns. And then I realised I shouldn't be making any, you know, I'm just some idiot from northern England, who couldn't hold a candle, and I don't really understand. So I'm going to withhold my opinion because it's not worth anything with regards to actual understanding and playing the game. But yeah, Ricky Marrow. It's interesting when those mirrors happen. Who wins out on top? And I think I do on occasion in these versus Wests. If Nuki, how another Chun Li player who may be lesser known or not as consistent as Nuki, when he loses, I always sort of like mark it out in my mind. It's like, oh, you lost the mirror to this guy. Um, but yeah, Ricky Marrow's obviously very good, and MOV, who I used to call Mov until Mutant XP of Jetty Circuit.
Oh, fun!
It's as well as
Because some old school players also call him Mauve. Bridler and I always call him MOV because Mauve just
yeah.
sounds weird.
I think it's one of them where because you're in such a I'm in a small bubble without any sort of talking to anybody else about it. You see these characters on the screen, but when it comes to talking about them, I think I did a trailer with for Mutant XP for an upcoming what was it for the US team going over to Co-op Cup, and I did some voiceover for it, and I think I just had to stop a couple of times because my I was just saying some of the names wrong. And he said, because the American audience would have heard, like, who's he talking about?
Yeah,
He's
I
like,
feel you.
Marv? Who's Marv? And it's like, it's MOV. It's like, oh, okay. So we'll just say MOV in those
Yeah,
instances.
maybe
Uh,
because Portuguese has these very different syllables and sounds from English, we can actually pronunciate the names closer to Japanese, because it would be Kokujin, but in Portuguese, Kokujin.
ah,
So it sounds kind of similar. Uh,
that does sound similar.
yeah.
I think I suppose with me in the north of England, uh, I'm probably butchering a lot
Oh,
of
it's
international
very
language.
it's very turned up in some consonants or whatever, but I think it's understandable. Uh, yeah, people always talk about Third Strike only being Chun-Li and Yun, but usually the people who say that absolutely suck. I'd like to put it in a gentler way, but that's exactly how it is. Like, Riddler actually got incredibly angry, and it's rare footage of Riddler actually angry, because Riddler, uh, well, you've never seen him, but he's this guy in glasses, you know. He's there, just playing the game, very chill. He's not a guy you'd see angry often, you know. He worked as a lawyer for a while. He's very, you know, kind of formal, you know, normal guy. You picture him working at an office somewhere, right?
Uh-huh.
And to see him fucking mad at someone, it's not something you often hear. And he got really mad because he destroyed this guy on Fightcade while playing Q. And usually,
Mm.
Fightcade chat is cancer, right? And we're used to that. We don't even type there. But Fightcade chat was talking about how the top tiers are broken and everything. And the guy he beat, who is a decent player here, not elite by any means, but decent, joined up and started saying, no, because Chun-Li and Yun, they never lose to anything else. And he was like, dude, I literally just beat you with Q. You didn't win a match. What are you talking about? But yeah, uh, I think early on we usually had this not mentality, but we had the impression that Chun Li always won. I don't think that's true. I think Chun Li carries the player a bit early on. After a certain point, you have to play well. Um, and by having the result of every tournament, at least the major ones, uh, I often see like Chun Li losing. I think people don't realize that we've had 12 winning Corporation Cup. Pistachio won in, I don't remember what Corporation Cup it was. We've had so many low tier players being so successful. Kuroda himself, right? The legendary Q, legendary success for the game. Uh, we've had Hayao, obviously, recent Evo, you know. We've had so
Yeah.
many godly low tier players where Third Strike is one of the only games where you actually see these characters get to the finals and get way, you know, past those that initial tier barrier. And the only other game I've seen with anything similar to this is a game I love to hate, which is Street Fighter 2. And in Street Fighter 2, there are like these absurd Blanca players. They make Blanca look god tier, and Blanca is trash. Like Blanca is like the third or fourth worst character in the game, and they make him look like $100. It's absurd. But yeah, the general consensus between the elite players recently is that MOV fucking sucks. Okay, not exactly sucks, but that's an exaggeration. But that MOV is actually not that good in a way. if you look at him playing, he has these weird tactics where he starts jumping with Chun-Li, and he usually lost more. There's footage of him losing to Sho in league battles,
Yeah.
and he usually lost a bit more than the other Chun-Li players, at least from the elite. So the current debate is if Michael Tan passed Rikimaru for being the second strongest. Uh, but my particular answer is probably no. Rikimaru beat Ushi by like 40 to nearly 30. It was a huge result. And Ushi nearly beat Michael to 10. It was 10-9. Very close set.
Mm.
So currently the order, the Chun-Li pecking order, would be something like Nuki first, Rikimaru second, Michael third, and then either Shirokuro or MOV next. But it's debatable. Uh,
Yeah.
the general meme, because right here, as a podcast host, I need to be very, contained. Let's put it that way. But as a player, the 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 recent meme, which is what I usually say, is like, I'd stomp Tominaga, I'd then know him. He ain't shit. I'd win. But I can't say that, even jokingly, regarding some players. I look at them and I'm like, okay, I'm most likely gonna lose. And there are very few players I say that to these days, because I got pretty good at the game. And KO is one of them, because KO is just, he plays a very simple game. Yang is a very simple character. He's one of the easiest characters in the game. But the way he plays Yang, he walks forward, he presses buttons, and he parries. And he doesn't care. And if he doesn't beat your button with his own or parry that, he most likely lost the set. Because he's like the simplicity taken to another level. It's so fun to watch and try to mimic, because he turns the game into single player. It's really, really fun to watch KO play. He's my favorite player these days, probably.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah. He's got a wide character usage as well, hasn't he? KO over the years.
excuse me, what was the question?
Oh, he's played a few characters,
Oh,
hasn't he,
yeah.
as well?
Yeah. He started playing the game with Yun. Then he changed to Yang and became a Yang main. And ever since then, sometimes he picks Alex, Ken, and Goki, from what I know.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
Goki is actually insane. His Goki might be the best Goki we've ever seen. Cause, and I say this, it might be a fun note before we start finishing up. I feel like some characters in Third Strike haven't been taken to their limit. And two of these characters are Q and Goki. Q because Kuroda had this very particular style where he reacted to everything. He punished it with the first super art, and he'd play a very defensive game. Then the years go by and TM shows up. And TM was a more gimmicky Q, a more aggressive Q. He'd dash, low parry, punish with SA2. He got a command grab, which is something we didn't know existed. But he's worse at fundamentals. And what I think is, picture a player that had that Kuroda style and reactions and fundamentals, and fuse him with those tricks from the TM style of play, and you'd have the best Q player possible. And we've never seen that. And it's the same thing for Goki, because Match was pretty good zoning and in the neutral game, but he did job sometimes. And then you have Uraken, which is completely crazy. You have Kuroda, who was very crazy, only played with fundamentals, a very gimmicky Goki. You have Zabi and Decoy, which tried to be, more lame, more contained as well. Uh, but we've never seen like a perfect Goki. Like this Goki is the Goki. You need to watch this guy. The closest we got was Match probably. But when we see KO play Goki, he does some shit we're not used to because he's that good at the game. Even if he's not a Goki player, he's gonna punish some stuff that people don't punish usually. He's gonna, press buttons better and parry better, and that changes the landscape of the game completely. So
Mm.
I think Third Strike still has untapped potential on that regard. I don't think we've seen the best Q, the best Goki, the best Yang we've seen definitely. Maybe Makoto. Makoto has been getting her ass kicked recently because Mimura and Tominaga have been jobbing as far as the eye can see, and Mimura lost to Shinta Ken. He also struggled a lot against Mabutofu in recent sets.
Mm.
Uh, they both
Yeah, I'm quite.
lost. Uh, what was that?
I was going to say like I'm quite out of the loop with anything modern, anything recent. Pretty much like so I sometimes I'll make a note about this player's playing this character which is unusual, and it's like actually no, that's normal at the moment. But, yeah. Well, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, we usually keep in touch with the recent tournaments and that kind of thing, so that we can watch who's winning the current scene and all of that. But with the arcades closing down in Japan, it seems like there has been uh, the momentum seems to be kind of gone in a way. I'm kind of actually worried about that. Some players aren't playing anymore, and they were just a few months ago. Uh, Acho and some other arcades closed down, unless I'm mistaken. But I definitely know some arcades closed, and I'm worried where that's heading because this is probably like the lowest point for Japanese Third Strike, and in a way, it's the highest point for Westerner Third Strike because the Japanese players have been coming to the U.S. and it isn't that unbalanced anymore. Kuni lost to Frankie in an FT10, and that was insanity because Frankie, uh, he's a good player, but no offense, Frankie, if you ever watch this, all right.
Mm.
I appreciate what you do for the community. You're a good player, but I didn't think that was gonna happen, and it's kind of insane because the Westerners are now very even, very close to the Japanese level.
Yeah, all change.
We have another question.
Hmm.
Do you see Third Strike as a mostly flowcharty game, or do you believe it embraces many playstyles in a versatile way? Like Q being used by both TM and Kuroda with different playstyles, and there we go. Yeah. Uh,
Uh, yeah, definitely the latter. I think like Alia, the Makoto player, had that explanation. There's the
Genken,
I
right?
suppose. Yeah, there's like one person fights and he's like I wouldn't say flowchart, but like technical. And the other one, the other purse type is plays from the heart, and the other one is just uh, uh,
Oh, I know
so
what
maybe
you mean. The Korea gaming player archetypes there. I remember those.
yeah. I think Third Strike's one of those where there's with the parry. There's a lot of It's like with Vineo, he looks amazing when it all when it all works out, but he looks awful when it doesn't. Um, but yeah, I think there is such a wide variety of uh, play styles within people with the same character. You know, it's there are things you can rely on, but it's almost like you can turn that on its head sometimes, and you get some really out the box people, like some of that the Hugo tech changing recently with the and like Q himself with them getting hold of that, where his throw box is off the is airborne, going from crouching to standing, and even them getting down the the Kara command and deadly blow. So there's all these, and again it was Tele Sniper when he came out with the double Fukiage on Chun Li, which was before it hadn't really been thought possible or technical or just too difficult to get in. And then this random lad in the US manages to produce this tech, and then very slowly you see Tominaga starting to try and land it in East versus West. So yeah, there's plenty more to come. I think, like you say, there's I don't think we see anything, which is nice about the game. It's so enduring. Get these new people in with fresh perspectives.
Yeah. As a player, I definitely think. Uh, sorry, a question came up, but it's something I actually had already asked you. So never mind that. What I was gonna say is that as a player, I definitely feel that because I learned how to play Ken by mostly watching Matsuken, and he's a very lame player. Even when he could go to the bread and butter Ken stuff, he'd usually not do so to gain more meter and play it very safe.
Mm.
And I decided to watch him because I'm a very angry player. I get pissed off. I want to rush things, and I was like, okay, if I'm like this, I have to look for the opposite, which was Matsuken. And then you look at Deshiken, and it's completely different. Uh, Deshiken is out there never whiffing any normal. Then he finds a way in, and he always lands the Kara Shoryuken. He punishes a lot of things with SE3 instantly, like, oh, I blocked a CRMK, let me punish it with SE3. And he plays a very forward, immediate rushing game with Cam, like tick dash, uh, tick walk confirm, frame traps, you know, force your way into a jump. He's a very aggressive player, and he optimizes a lot of things which we didn't think was possible with Can. So I definitely
Mm.
think it's a very versatile game. I don't think it's flowcharty at all, unless you pick, I don't know, Yang, because the easier characters in the game, which in my opinion are Yang, Chun, and Makoto, they are more simple with their mechanics. Like Yang has really one special. He has a dive kick, which is a command normal, but he really only should ever use his Rika, the Mantis. So you ignore everything else. And like, oh hey, I have this roll kick here. Should I use it? No, don't. It's bad. Forget it exists. It's never gonna be used, or pretty much never, at least. So sometimes with them it feels more flowcharty, but I don't think. I don't think the game is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's like I was looking at the master sheet for Tugeki 2010. For places where they've got the um, footage of the qualifiers, and the 2010 one does. But I just noticed I put two comments in the. And I was like, what was I commenting on? And there's a Kuroda Ken versus Umezono Chun Li match in the quarterfinals. And I've just got this little line. It says 5 sweeps in a row. Kuroda Wild. So Kuroda in a quarterfinal in a Togeki just did 5 sweeps in a row on a Chun Li player. And it's like,
which is kind of weird actually.
which is I think what I did when I first played the game, tried to
Yeah,
sweep 5
like
times.
Kuroda has like these very weird gimmicky moments where I think he was really just mocking the other player. but some of those have technical reasons to be there, especially with like uh, Goki against Chun Li, because this is like another topic, completely off. But Ken has many specific tech to beat Chun Li that only Deshiken does, really.
Mm.
Like you can safe jump with jumping heavy kick, and if you safe jump and fall down, usually she'll try to press a button or kara throw, because even if it's not punishable, you can still try to win that turn, right? Because you're gonna fall on the ground after the parry, and you have a moment to technically have a few frames of advantage. But Deshiken, the wild fucking maniac he is, he safe jumped and then DP'd on landing. And if Chun Li blocks, he's dead. But because Chun Li is so used to kata throwing there, those dragon punches landed. And backdashing with Ken is also very important because the kata throw robs you from 500 meters away. By backdashing, she whiffs and you whiff punish. Or if you backdash and she does something else, you can get a buffer decently safe. So one of the things he does, which I mimic a lot, is empty jump. You fall down with low parry in case she CRMKs, and you backdash and instantly buffer. Because this basically beats everything she can do, like everything she can do in that specific interaction. And looking at Kuroda playing, he has some of these stacks, and he had them in like 2004, which is wild. But at the same time, he randomly like does some weird fucking shit which has zero reason to exist. I think he was like he was walking a fine line between genius and insanity there.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny watching him like turn, I suppose, what would be a flowchart response on its head. It becomes like your strongest option now becomes a weakness in some respects.
Yeah,
I
Chun Li
like it
Kara
when
throw
that
and
happens.
CRLP especially because Chun Li robs you. Not in the sense that she's broken, but in the sense she can just win interactions no other character can. And to punish that habit, Deshiken just came up with like a completely different style of play. And he beat Michael to 10, so like FT10. And that was like basically the two best active players fighting each other. And Deshiken had like this wild change in gameplay. Like it was very amazing to see and learn. If I didn't, learn those things, I'd still be losing to Chun. You know, it's quite crazy. I don't think it's flowcharty at all. Uh, what do you guys expect for the future of the game? With arcades closing down and the West growing with events and good players rising, maybe we'll see an exodus from Japan to France, USA, Brazil, and such. There's a lot of activity around these parts. There's growing interest and good coverage of it. You think that's possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, but in some respect, because like the places that are shutting in Japan, I don't think that's a decision because the business isn't viable. It's more like I've seen examples where there's just like the lease is up and the owners want they've got other plans for it, and don't necessarily care the cultural impacts a place that has been there for 20 years sort of anchors in the community. But again, as those places shut, I think we had one example in Tink Arcade being born out of an arcade that was shut by one of the guys setting up like a fundraiser. So, and again, it's his place. It's tiny, but it's almost like early days of what we saw in the UK and what in the US, where yes, arcades aren't really there anymore, but the model of them is to make them sort of viable is changing. So, like in the UK, we've got Heart of Gaming, but we've also got places like Arcade Club, which is huge, down in Bury in Manchester. But yeah, pay on the door, and everything's free play. And they've hosted, our Third Strike events, the Gutter Trash UK events. They were hosting them up north in this big place in Arcade Club rather than the place in London, because they moved location and it wasn't quite a bigger focus on the fighting game cabinets. So they said that the setup's nicer up north, so they're going to come up north for a change. But I think, and the same with the US, there's all these places have popped up with, Third Strike in them, whether they're barcades and similar. So I'm hopeful that with that change in model, certainly in the US, is brought like a renewed sort of like places for people to congregate and find scenes to start and get involved in them, start recording them. So even though the Japanese arcades are closing as well, I'm sort of hopeful at least that they might be on a similar trajectory as the West, and that it'll come round eventually again. The model might just needs to change. But yeah, it's great that it's flourishing so well over in the US. And again, like the Jazzy Circuit, it's not an arcade only event. They're quite open in the places that are running tournaments, including online. So yeah, there's as long as you're flexible and have give the people means to participate, then I think it's the game itself is entertaining enough that it'll always attract people.
Yeah, I sure hope at least that Japan manages to find a way where the top players keep playing and the tournaments keep going. Because from time to time, Newton hosts those special FT10s and it hosts tournaments on a weekly basis. But Newton is just like the biggest arcade pretty much. And the others, it's varied success. And for many people, like that was their hangout. Hey, do you want to head down the street and play some games? That was their day-to-day thing.
Yeah,
I do think the exodus is possible though, but more in a way like the Tekken community had, where like a country from the middle of nowhere actually had some of the best players in the world. Because arrogance or no, I think I can beat him. I think we can hang with them. You know, I say that with admiration because I've watched them for years. Uh, but I think we're at a level of play now where we could, at least give a good set. And I like to see that. I like to travel there. I like to, you know, hell, even if I lose, I like to have the experience. And hey, this is what happened. Uh, Especially with Japan seemingly slowing down, it might be like the perfect time. But the game really comes first. I just hope people keep playing the game and keep enjoying it in whatever way possible. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
well, nearly 3 hours of ShoryuCast. This is our longest yet. This is a record. Uh, but thank you so much, TheShend, for having the time and availability to talk with us and hopefully have a good time, a good conversation. I had a great time. Hopefully you did too. With these
Yeah,
with these ShoryuCasts, usually what I notice is wherever we were and in whatever time, whether it was the 90s or the 2000s or recently, we've all had similar experiences, and it's very crazy to notice how similar those experiences really were.
hmm.
It's quite uh I don't have words for it. it has a mystical element to it, and I'm not a guy to believe in those kinds of things, but it certainly comes off that way. Like, hey, that person was going through the exact same thing, and it really brings the sense of community back to me. It's nice.
Yeah, I think most people just want, you know, somewhere to hang out with friends, community. That third, what they call the third place, which I sort of like because third's in the title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being able to, spare the time of day and hang out. I'm probably gonna say some stuff in Portuguese now to finish this up.
No
Uh,
worries. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for you know sharing all of this with us, and hopefully the your next projects with the site and the arcades stop thinking they're being robbed or whatever. Maybe not in these exact words, but everything comes out alright, and hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, definitely. I always keep. I always like mooching through the discords and all the different scenes because I've got, like, in fact, all the servers I'm in are Third Strike related in one way or the other, except the One Piece spoilers one. But everything else is Third Strike related. So yeah, it's always good to keep in touch and see what people are doing everywhere. And again, like, well done to yourselves for putting such a good work in your part of the world.
Thanks, dude. Hopefully we'll be able to keep it up too. We have a few projects we're thinking of, further down the line. But yeah. Trocando pro
Cool.
português agora. Então, tem algumas pessoinhas ainda assistindo com a gente, não muitas. Mas o ShoryuCast vai ficando por aqui. Já fiz as últimas perguntas ali do pessoal que estava no chat. Quero agradecer muito a todo mundo que assistiu até aqui. Quero agradecer a todo mundo que participou de alguma forma. Temos duas formas de doações ali na descrição da stream. Temos a plataforma Coffee, que é especificamente para doações, e temos uma chave Pix, também para doações. Qualquer quantia é muito bem-vinda e vai ajudar bastante com os próximos projetos aí do canal e do servidor. Ademais, deixem seu like, se inscrevam, compartilhem a stream por aí, façam um esforço para aumentar o nosso alcance. Nós vamos ficando por aqui. Muito obrigado a todo mundo e tchau! Até amanhã, quando teremos mais um evento aqui no Blue Wolves. Tamo junto! Até amanhã!